Good evening, chaps. Oh, hang on, my mic's in the wrong place. Good evening, chaps and chapesses and whoever else is out there. Excuse me, the first one of the day. Oh, dear me. It's going to be one of those nights because it's a Friday. How are we all doing? Let's just have a look, see who's in. A lot of the usual faces here. Colin Falk and Ian Clark, Malcolm Spillett, David Evans, John Channing, Anton, how are you doing, mate? Johnny Random, Phil Simmons. Hope the interview went well, Phil. Who else we got in here? Nigel Pickett and S. Wainscott. And Anton was first. Yes, banging on the pub door, waiting for it to open. I know it well. That's kind of usually my trick. Evening, Mark. How are you, mate? So evening. I think that's Dan there from Scott Guitars. How are you, mate? Anyway, yes, it's been an eventful week. It has to be said. I've mentioned in the past that I've got this this kind of ongoing love-hate relationship with Les Pauls, where I don't have one for ages, and then I decide I want one, and then I get one, and then I love it, and then it ends up just sort of not getting played. Well, I'm at the beginning of that cycle once again because I bought a Les Paul this week, not a Gibson. I've just been so curious about everything I've been hearing about these 2020 Epiphones, the sort of slightly redesigned ones, and I pulled the trigger on one, and it's well, I won't deliver too many spoilers because there's a couple of videos coming up this week on that particular guitar. But so far it appears to be a nice piece of kit. Although it did require a little bit of fettling when it arrived. But you can hear all about that in Thursday's video. So, yes, what have I got lined up for you this week? Well, tomorrow, I think the video title is It Might Get a Bit Shreddy. Remember that chord sequence that we looked at on Wednesday, that kind of classic rock thing in a minor key? Well, basically, I've just taken that chord sequence and had a little bit of a noodle over it, and the resulting solo is what we're looking at tomorrow. Then Monday, of course, Monday is a bit of a solo analysis kind of day, and we're looking at probably, and well, this one's a bit of a teaser for you. Probably the most famous guitar solo to come out of Middlesbrough. So chew on that one. Who or what might that be? Tuesday, we are looking at the unboxing video of the Les Paul. I don't quite get it myself, to be honest with you. People wanting to watch somebody opening a box and taking something out of a box. It's not something I watch, but whenever I do an unboxing video or put unboxing in the title, you want to see the views that video will get. It is indeed. Chris Rea says, was it Pablo Hank? Indeed, Chris Rea. Yes. That's the solo we're looking at on Monday. Tuesday, as I say, is the Les Paul unboxing video. Wednesday, we're looking at the chord sequence, which links Bryan Adams, Green Day, and Oasis. One fairly simple chord sequence that has provided global hits for all three of those artists. And no, it's not on the beach. Yes, it's Chris. I think we've established it's Chris Rea, and it's, well, I'll give it away here. Put you out your misery. We're looking at the slide solo from Road to Hell, which is in probably the most unusual tuning I've ever used on the guitar. More of that about that on Monday. Wednesday, as I say, that kind of chord sequence video. Thursday, we are looking at basically a review of the Les Paul. It's what it sounds like, what it was like to play, etc., etc. So that is the shape of the week to come. He does indeed. Trogley does a pretty good, turns a pretty good living out of unboxing videos. I just find his videos addictive. It's his voice as much as anything else. Yeah, those vintage Les Pauls are fantastic instruments, Ozzy. I mean, so much so that, you know, I remember back in, however long ago it was, years ago, it was quite a lot of years ago because I was still buying guitar magazines. But, you know, when those Trev Wilkinson designed vintages started coming out, you were seeing people like Jeff Whitehorn endorsing them, you know, and he has his own signature model now. But, you know, Robbie Gladwell, you know, famous Dr. Robert from the Guitarist magazine, a man who knows a thing or two about Lou theory, it has to be said, and worked for Gibson for a long time. You know, and there was, I can't remember who it was, but it's, Graham Oliver, the guy who used to be in Saxon, you know, he's kind of using them, and Martin Barr out of Jethro Tull, he's using them. So any kind of semblance of an idea that those are just beginner level, entry level instruments is just, you know, well, how come all of these guys, jobbing musicians, are using them? Midge Ewart does play a vintage Les Paul. I believe he has his own signature model, isn't it? It's like a P90 gold top thing with a Bigsby, I seem to remember. John Parr does indeed play a vintage. You're showing your age there, Derek. You're showing your age. St. Elmo's Fire. Do you remember that other single he had? That other attempt at a hit that he did like a duet with Meatloaf. I can't remember what it was called. Rock and Roll Mercenaries, that was it. You know, so I think he's in the same line of business now as my pal Steve Hoggart. I think he's like some kind of studio owner, producer kind of guy now. Just back in whichever part of Yorkshire he hails from. What a voice on him, though. You know, it's. I tell you who his voice always reminded me of, and I say this to a lot of people, and I get a blank look because the person he reminds me of is often not very well recognised. But you know, Jimmy Barnes, you know, the old Australian singer. You know, he had a few hits, didn't he? He had a big one with In Excess in the late 80s, early 90s. Oh, you had fish and chips from Seabreeze, did you, Steve? Let me just scroll back up the chat. Yes, it keeps winning awards, that chip shop, for the best fish and chips in the area, and understandably. Have you seen the interview with Wilco Johnson on YouTube where he explains his playing style? Paul Weller said Wilco was a big influence. Now, I wouldn't have pegged that, actually. I wouldn't have thought, because I don't hear any similarity between Paul Weller, his guitar playing, and Wilco. But I do remember like in the 80s, that BBC show, Rock School, where Wilco was being interviewed on there, and he explained his playing style there. And it was a little bit like the first time I saw Jeff Healey play. You know, when you think, it's a little bit like watching water running uphill. You know, it's like, that looks kind of, I shouldn't be hearing that while I'm seeing that, you know, because Wilco doesn't seem to be doing much anything else but just strumming. And you're hearing all of this kind of chord lead stuff coming out. It's phenomenal. He really does sound like two guitar players at the same time. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Ozzy. Any kind of relicking on a guitar to me is a complete anathema. I know it divides opinion, but it's just not my cup of tea. But the thing is, on those original Lemon Drop guitars, it wasn't even a particularly good relic job. I don't think. And I think that's why they brought out an unrelicked version. But the downside of that one, when I played one, was that it was just such a heavy gloss finish on it, which isn't a deal breaker for me. But I just thought if you could have kept like the neck nice and satin, but just not done the relicking, that would have been the best of both worlds. Hi John, which guitar will you do the Chris Rea solo on? It's a slide solo, so it's being played on the bits and pieces Telecaster there, the beer o'clock telly. Oh, how are you, Bob? I've just noticed Bottleneck Bob's in. Bottleneck Bob is the proud new owner of a Gordon Smith guitar. I know it well. Yes, but Bob bought my Gordon Smith and he received it yesterday. And I think he's a man in love. Yeah. Wilco has often said that he was massively influenced by Mick Green. It's if you don't know who Mick Green is, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, basically. Relicking is good on custom shop, but sub £1,500 relicking is usually enough. You see, I don't even like it on the expensive stuff. But there you go. I'm naturally relicked, of course. Where are we? Evening, Craig. How are you, mate? Yes, Chris. I prefer to make the scratches on in my guitar myself. Indeed. I've nothing against a guitar that looks kind of lived in and stuff, but you get the. What I can't get my head around is a £4,000 price tag for something that looks like it's been buried in a peat bog for 40 years. It just it doesn't excite me, to be honest. I don't like relicking either. Just look at the wear and tear Rory put on his Strat in 3 years and figure the best way to relic a guitar is to play the shit out of it. Indeed. Evening, Kevin Rodriguez. Evening. Hello from New Jersey. Well, good evening from, for once, sunny Redcar. The weather caught me out today, it has to be said. I took the dog out for a walk this afternoon. I looked out the window and I thought, yes, it's sunny, but I know that's deceptive. It's going to be absolutely Baltic. But it wasn't. The temperature was in double figures. It was positively tropical. There's Lee. Evening, John. Hope you've recovered from your birthday celebrations. Yes, I have, because I've discovered the trick, is to listen to that little voice in your head that says, yeah, you probably shouldn't have any more. And, and take notice of that, and then immediately slug down a pint of water, and usually I'm fine the next day. Yeah, Rory's guitar was stolen. That's a story that I think it's Donal, his brother, has told a few times in interviews and so on. And I think that when he got it back, I think that's what made that guitar so precious to Rory. It was just like, it was. I love the story that that I can't remember whether it was Rory or one of his family told, where. As a young musician in Ireland, he wanted this Stratocaster. He wanted it so bad, and he persuaded his mum, I think, to sign the HP agreement on it by saying, "Well, yes, but you see, if I have this guitar, I can play rhythm and lead guitar, so it's a bargain, really, because it's like two guitars in one." I thought, yeah, nice touch, mate. Who is the best female guitarist ever, in your opinion, John? Well, the one that really blew me away when I saw her was Jennifer Batten. You know, just that Rimsky-Korsakov thing she did, Flight of the Bumblebee. I mean, that was just jaw-dropping. And, you know, I think, I can't remember which guitar show it was I was at, because I used to go to a few of them when Guitarist magazine used to do the UK sort of little mini NAMM shows. She was at one of those, and really approachable, really, really just down-to-earth person, and boy, can she play. John, I do specialist paint finishing, and I marbled, I think that's supposed to be telly, back in 1975. Well, fair enough, mate. I love the story of Francis Rossi's famous green Telecaster that, you know, he just kind of slapped a coat of emulsion paint on it, apparently on a kitchen table, you know, just because he didn't like the natural wood finish. So he just thought, yeah, I got some paint there, just bosh, 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 bosh. Yeah, Samantha Fish is a canny player. I'll give you that. Joanne Shaw Taylor, there's another one. Tal Wilkenfeld on bass. Yes, I mean, if you've ever watched that Jeff Beck at Ronnie Scott's gig, I watch it whenever I have the time to, basically, because it's just such a fantastic gig, you know. And he doesn't do a lot of live work, Jeff. You know, he's not exactly known for his grueling tour schedules, is he? But you know, so whenever you get the chance to kind of even see him live on video, it's well worth checking out. And yeah, Francis Rossi does have that hole in his telly body, but when you look back at old footage of Quo playing live, it's not there. So I don't know why it's there or when it occurred. It was just like one day I noticed it was. Yes, I did hear a story about Dolly Parton. She used to use open tunings a lot, so she could just kind of do, you know, the one finger bar chord kind of thing. My mate Doc Cox has a telly that was finished in bright yellow and carpet. Is that the famous Doc Cox? You know, the Ivor Biggin chap. Yes, I used to have one of his tapes when I was a youth. If you have a £200 unrelic guitar and you scratch, you get upset. But if you have a 5,000 relic guitar and you scratch it, you don't care. Go figure. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's a Marmite thing, isn't it? It's for viewers outside the UK. Marmite is a delicious spread that you put on toast, and you either find it delicious or utterly repulsive, and it does kind of draw a line down my household. You know, I crave it sometimes. I could eat it out the jar with a spoon, but I can't go within 20 feet of my wife if I've been anywhere near it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure. Oh, well, enough of my personal life is a funny phrase he said during the show while presenting the next artist to come on. Evening, Steve. How are you, mate? Oh, yes. You see, the Marmite comment has divided the chat already. I gather you're not a fan, Colin. Oh, I see. We've got another fan of Stuart McBride in there as well. Yes, I also enjoy his books. I do like his work. Crime novelist, crime novel set in Scotland. Yes, indeed, John. He was Ivor Biggin. I met him playing in a pub in Eastbridge, Suffolk. Fair enough. Yes. It was a big shock when there was this, for anyone who doesn't remember, there was this sort of light-hearted consumer affairs program on the BBC in the 70s, 80s, and what have you, called That's Life, and he was one of the pundits on there. And then it turned out that he'd had this previous career as a slightly risque musical comedy artist. Lots of songs about the joys of onanism, and we'll leave it at that. Strange thing about Marmite, says Malcolm, I can take it or leave it. Well, you must be in that. It's like flipping a coin, isn't it? It'll land kind of heads up or tails up, but every now and again it'll land right on its edge. And you must be the. That's the one, Steve. Yes. Where are we? Anyway, I seem to have unleashed a wave of nostalgia for Ivor Biggin and the Ivor Biggin and the Red Nosed Burglars or something like that, wasn't it? The band. Doc is also an authority on the blues. Doc Cox. I wouldn't have ever guessed that. Here we go. Yes, all of the old Ivor Biggin jokes are coming out, and it does me good. John, if you ever have a beef and tomato pot noodle, bung a teaspoonful of Marmite in and stir. Oh, yes. Now that's the food of the gods, that, isn't it? Yes. Pot noodles and Marmite. Dear me. When I was a kid, I used to love Marmite brew, which was just like, used to get like a cup of hot Bovril, which was just like Bovril stirred up with hot water. Well, you could do the same with Marmite. Delicious. Thank you, Craig. Many, many thanks as well to Steve for all of the help he gave me with that video. It just started off as a daft little idea in my mind to kind of try and recreate that particular tone. And I came up with a bunch of different versions, and none of them were entirely what I was hoping to be. And I thought, well, why don't I get Steve to give me a hand? And he did, and he really stepped up to the plate, and I can't thank him enough. Evening, Jero. How are you, mate? If you play blues, you have to be called Doc or Lightning or possibly get away with Rev. Well, yeah. Okay, then, here's a challenge for you. I play blues, you may have noticed, every now and again. Give me my blues player's moniker then. What would I be if I was a proper bluesman? What name should I adopt? Doc tells me he once heard that song coming from a pickup truck in New Orleans. Rob Johnson, yeah. Hi, John. Any chance of a Queen solo? Because I want to break free from the usual stuff. I did a Queen solo back end of last year for the Patreon supporters. I did Don't Stop Me Now. But I did a video, eons ago. If you search it out, it's called What I Learned from Brian May. And there's, I think the Bohemian Rhapsody solo is in there on that video, and the crazy little thing called Love solo. So I have done Brian May in the past. I shall endeavour to look into him again. It's, but it struck me, this whole Patreon thing. I've been doing it a year now. It's absolutely flown down. Blues name Teesside Robson. Blind Drunk Robson, Big John Robson. I like Blind Drunk Robson. Yes, that does. That will pretty much apply in a few hours' time, I should imagine. Lightning Boy John Marmite, Catfish John, Big Hans Robson. What did I learn from Brian May? Well, it was one of the first. Brian May was one of the first guitar players who I started figuring out the solos to. Or of rather, that I noticed he was stepping outside of the pentatonic boxes. And why is he doing that? What note is he adding in? Oh, it's a note that I think is in that chord there. Jimmy Page as well, but Brian May was one of those first ones that I really recall. T-Bone Robson. Oh, thank you, Chris. Thank you. Well, I'm just happy with what I've got. It's I've got to a point now with the lessons and the Patreon and the YouTube channel where my missus can kind of put her feet up a little bit. I won't bore you with the details, but she has had a bit of a rough time in recent years, and she's pretty much a lady of leisure at the moment. So it's it's gratifying that I can just come up here into this little back bedroom of the house, and ferret away with my guitar and kind of get the bills paid. It's better than working for a living. Thank you. Long John Baldy. That's the one. That's the one. Either Blind Drunk Robson or Long John Baldy. I like that one. Yes. Did you know your wife's country banned Marmite a few years, blaming its salt content? I didn't, but I can't imagine Canada was a massive market for that particular product in the first place. So there would be riots on the streets if they tried banning Marmite in the UK. Oh dear me, that one's been shook up, hasn't it? Let's get it into the glass before it ends up on the floor. Excuse me, I'm attending to urgent business. So anyway, in case anyone's wondering, I know we tend to kind of cover this topic most weeks. The groceries came from Morrison's again this week. Morrison's export the Harley Benton of beers. It is essentially Stella, but quite a bit cheaper. Rogan Josh Robson. It is a Rogan Josh tonight, actually, as well. Went to the Bass Brewery where they saved and sold the old yeast to the Marmite factory. Yes. I knew it came from the brewing industry, but I didn't know it was the Bass factory, the Bass Brewery. How important is guitar speed in your view? That's a good one. I mean, I'm a guitar player. I like listening to, good guitar playing, and occasionally that will, include a bit of flashy, speedy stuff. But it's not a prerequisite. It's just, I tend to view speed as just one of those things that you can do to increase a sense of tension in a solo, but there are other things you can do as well. Sometimes the polar opposite of speed, leaving just a long gap, is a great way of adding to. I mean, Peter Green, he would do that, and it's just a way of it's a device. I don't think it's thinking of it as a central facet of a guitar solo is a bit like thinking of the the parsnips and the carrots and the peas as the central part of a Sunday roast. It's not. It's there to kind of enhance it, but it's not a central part of it. I'm turning into me dad because I like to say, well, as long as it's got a tune to it, lad, then it's. Yeah, Steve Vai has a sense of melody, and that's as much of his speed. Indeed, Malcolm. It's why I never really got the whole '80s shred thing. Just all of this kind of Olympic attitude towards how many notes can I play as quickly in a shorter space as possible. It just never really kind of, I could appreciate it for the cleverness of it, but it just never really gave me that tingle, you know, that music does if it's done well. And there were one or two, Vinnie Moore, Satriani, perhaps. I mean, Vinnie Moore's Time Odyssey is, for me, it's probably the only 80s neoclassical style thing that I listen to in you know, on a regular basis, because it's melodic, you know. Yes, I'm aware of Chris Stone, Kingfish Ingram. I've been checking out a couple of his things on Spotify. Was it Spotify or YouTube? Can't remember, but some streaming service. Shredding is all Alvin Lee's fault. Yeah, Mozart was indeed criticised for scoring too many notes. But, you know, I mean, again, the fast players that I admire, it's almost like the speed is just, do you know when it's kind of there but you don't notice it? Steve Morse springs to mind. You know, one of my favorite Deep Purple tracks was from Perpendicular. You know, Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming. The solo Steve plays on that is achingly beautiful, but he shreds a little bit in it. But it's there to enhance the excitement of it. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I was just never a big Dream Theater fan, Craig. I got to tell you, John Petrucci. You know, I've seen him interviewed, and he comes across as just such a nice guy. And you know, I'd love to hear him play beyond the realms of Dream Theater, because I admire his playing, but I just can't get into. It's just a bit too Dream Theater, dare I say, a tiny bit pretentious. You know, I don't mean that as a criticism if you're into all that kind of Moon in June sort of stuff, but it's just not my cup of tea, really. The right note is just half a note away, says BB King. Best wishes from Glasgow, says Frank Bolam. Well, cheers from Redcar. This is the third one of the evening, I believe. Or is it? Yes, the third one of the evening. And there's a shed full more in the backyard. Gambali is a great player. Watched a good interview with Rick Beato a little while back. Yeah, again, another guy. I had that. I can't remember if it was Starlicks or Hotlicks or REH. You know, those kind of instructional VHSs of his back in the early 90s. I got it, and you know, it's just he's got the full on kind of mullet and the leather trousers and the pink shirt, and he's shredding away on a bright day-glow yellow Ibanez, and now you look at him and he's just this he's this fat bald guy. You know? Just still shredding, but like got a real melodic jazz fusion sensibility, which that was the problem for me with a lot of the fusion stuff that came out in the 80s. It sounds so dated now, all those cheesy 80s synth patches and everything that's on there. Looking closely at the Hendrix waxwork at an exhibition, I told my then girlfriend, look, he has 6 fingers, that's why he was so good. Got to tell you, me and the missus, when we went over to Canada a few years ago, we were in Niagara Falls. Now, Niagara Falls, I mean, we all know of Niagara Falls, but it's this beautiful natural spectacle, this I mean, like really awe-inspiring. If you've never seen it up close and personal, then you can't get the scale of it. It's jaw-droppingly fantastic to look at and to be near, you know. And the trip on the Maid of the Mist and everything is fantastic. But Niagara Falls itself, the town is like a sort of Blackpool, but not quite so cosmopolitan, you know. It's a bit seedy, it has to be said. Niagara Falls in Canada, anyway. I can't speak for the US Niagara Falls because we never went over the border. And there was this rock and roll waxwork museum, and it was like about $20 entry to it. And we thought, yeah, this will be good, yeah. And it was literally all they'd done was get like a bunch of kind of shop mannequins and dress them up in kind of, you know, gear, you know, in sort of rock star gear, you know, like put a wig on it and put a guitar around it and, you know, kind of, you know, and you could see that they'd used the same mannequin for Mick Jagger as they had for Jimi Hendrix, and they just kind of used some wood stain or something on it for the Jimi Hendrix one, and kind of given it a different wig and put a guitar in. They even got the guitar the wrong way around. They put a left-handed guitar in a right-handed pose for him. They'd obviously kind of modelled it on a photo that had been flipped. Honestly, we were absolutely just kind of creasing ourselves and laughing at it. It was ridiculous, so ridiculous it was funny. Do you think if one guitarist in a band is playing a Les Paul, then the second definitely shouldn't, as this creates a muddy sound? Well, I don't know. It never seemed to harm Thin Lizzy, did it? You know, or Buns and Toasties. I mean, Guns and Roses. It can be. It you know, it depends really. It is something I've heard of before, and it's well, I know when I'm like kind of tracking guitar parts when I'm recording, I do find it better because I usually pan everything hard left and right. I'll do one with a humbucker and one with a single coil, and that seems to be easy to mix, but that probably says more about my mixing skills than it does about the right way of doing it. The Sweet are releasing a reworking of Desolation Boulevard. Oh dear, please leave well alone. Yeah. Talking about reboots like that, have you heard Frasier's coming back? They're doing a reboot of Frasier, which will be interesting. That was one of my favourite shows, it has to be said. When I went to see the Falls in the US, it was Frozen. Amazing scene. I must never forget. Yeah, I mean, I saw it in the height of summer, and it was just awe-inspiring. I mean, we tend to use the word awesome a lot these days, don't we? Just when we kind of mean sort of worthy of approval. But you know, this was like really kind of wow, you know, kind of full-on experience. It was great. Yeah, Phil was quite the poet, wasn't he, Ozzy? You know, he was. I was listening to. I told you many times I listen to an album every morning when I first kind of have me, you know, first coffee on a morning. A couple of days ago, it was Black Rose by Thin Lizzy, and I just listen to that album. The first track, Do Anything You Want To. And just listen to the rhyming scheme in that. That's a man who knew his way around around the language, you know. And it's, you know, there are people that will investigate you, intimidate, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but you know, fantastic. Just the words just seem to kind of tumble out in a way that just are fantastically clever. So, I mean, is this just a remaster of this new Sweet album, or have they redone it? And if so, who's singing? Because aren't most of them dead now? I mean, and certainly Brian Connolly, but who else? What's the deal with the Sweet albums? I went down to the crossroads, but only came back with some Marmite. Yes. New Gary Moore album, How Blue Can You Get, to be released 20th of April. Thoughts, John? Well, I'll be getting it. I must admit, I'm a huge Gary Moore fan, but something happened in the late 90s with Gary that it was from the sort of Dark Days in Paradise album onwards, and they had that sort of different beat than Scars and stuff, and I just thought, this really isn't grabbing me. And then Back to the Blues came out, and that was an okay album. It wasn't sort of up there with Still Got the Blues, but it was a return to form. But there was something happened with his vocals. I don't know what it was. His vocals took on a very nasal, unpleasant timbre towards the end of his career. And ironically, it's not there when you listen to his live work from that time. That Phil Lynott tribute, One Night in Dublin, it's not evident on that, but it was on his studio albums. And other people have said the same thing to me as well. So I don't know. I'm hoping that I'm going to love it. I'm hoping it's not going to be one of those albums that I find myself wanting to love. Oh, sweet lineup: Lee Small bass vocals, Bruce Bislin drums, vocals, Paul Manzi lead vocals, Andy Scott lead guitar vocals, Steve Mann guitar keyboards. I'm not hugely an authority on Sweet, but what have we got left there out of the original lineup then? Have you heard the Philip Lynott album? Well, I had Solo in Soho, which was the solo album that he did. I didn't. Was there another one? That was a good album actually, because Mark Knopfler played on that, King's Call and stuff. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Bob. There was just something with the vocals. I've got to tell you, one of my favourite Gary Moore albums, and I still listen to it on a regular basis, was that BBM album. The Bruce Baker Moore album. That was a fantastic album. And people said, "Oh, well, it sounds too much like Cream." What do you expect? It's a guy who was heavily influenced by Eric Clapton, playing with, the other two guys from Cream. What did you want it to sound like? Green Day. You're currently watching Blake 7, Ozzy. Oh, dear me. Yes. I just never got into Blake 7. I got to be honest with you. I was a massive, what do they call them these days? Whovian Doctor Who fan in the 70s. I was the sort of John Pertwee, Tom Baker era Doctor Who. And I watched it for a little while when it came back, but it just wasn't the same. But I never ever got into Blake 7. Run for Cover wasn't a bad album. It wasn't. It was okay. The thing I didn't like about Run for Cover was that sort of reworking of Empty Rooms. I love the Victims of the Future version of Empty Rooms, but there was some other good tracks on Run for Cover. Yeah. Well, Military Man I think was on there, and Out in the Fields was off that album, wasn't it? So enough on there to keep me happy, to be honest with you. Patrick Troughton, best Doctor Who ever. Yeah, you see, I can vaguely remember Patrick Troughton as Doctor Who. That was probably when I first started watching. When you're kind of peering out from behind the sofa because you're scared of the Daleks. Saw BBM, but they were great, but far too loud. Yeah, well, that was it, wasn't it? It was Gary did like it loud, didn't he? Blake Seven was great for the time. Servalan was a guilty pleasure. Yes, I remember Servalan. Yes, indeed. The Philip album was to be called Fatalistic Attitude, but the record label wouldn't allow it for some reason. Much better title, though. Okay, fair enough. John, it's got no caffeine and Gino. It's got, I think that's Kathleen and Gino and Old Town on it. Okay. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I thought Old Town was on the Solo in Soho record. I don't know. Anyway, it's I can't imagine why my memory is playing tricks on me. Anyway, chaps, excuse me for just a moment. Dear me, the last beer. We're into the final countdown now, lads. Anyway, oh, that's another one that's been shook up. See if I can get this without it looking like it needs a flake in it. Oh, well, we tried. It'll settle down. It all went in the glass anyway. What was your best ever gig, John? That would be difficult. The gig where I saw Gary at Newcastle City Hall on the Still Got the Blues tour, that was a fantastic gig. The much maligned, undeservedly so, I think, Eric Clapton at the NEC on the first date on the Journeyman tour. That was a fantastic gig. Like prop. You could tell he was. I didn't know it at the time, but he was sober for the first time in many years, because he was he had the he was on and off the drink for many years, wasn't he? And that was, you could tell he was putting everything into that performance. So that was a good gig. Jeff Healey, again, Newcastle City Hall. What a fantastic gig that was. They couldn't get him off the stage. He was just absolutely on fire that night. And just a blind guy with a bass and drums behind him, playing the guitar across his lap. And what a tone he got just from that Squire Strat. So it would have to be one of those three, and it would be kind of splitting hairs to say which one of those three it was. Okay, Craig. Parisian Walkways was one of the first great solos you taught me many years ago. Fantastic solo. I've taught that to a few people. I'd be lying if I said I can remember teaching it to you, Craig, but I'm pleased you got something out of it, mate. Have you ever played a twin neck? No, I've never found the need to. It was just, if there was a 12-string part on a track, I would just kind of stomp on a chorus pedal or something just to kind of get it somewhere near the sound. No, I haven't heard of any Jeff Healey's jazz albums. I confess I didn't know he'd done any. Best gig, The Clash, says Brad. Does anyone know how to post a contact email without YouTube deleting it in the live chat? You're asking the wrong bloke there, mate. It's asking me for my IT skills. I'm afraid I don't know. I saw Dizzy, Lizzy, and guitarist had his strings on upside down. I saw Dizzy Lizzy and the guitarist had his. Is that a Lizzy tribute band, Ozzy? That was actually another good gig at a well-known venue on Teesside, which is sadly no longer here, just over the road from me. The Red Car Bowl, I saw a band there called Limehouse Lizzy. I don't even know if they're still on the go, but if they are and you get the chance to go and see them, go and see them. They are absolutely fantastic. They're a tribute act, so they do tend to try and kind of look like the band, but they're not impersonators. And I saw them on a tour that they were doing where they were basically doing the whole of Live and Dangerous. They did the Live and Dangerous set as their set list. Fantastic night. I didn't know that, Pablo. I didn't know he did a couple of jazz albums. I certainly didn't know he played trumpet. I shall hunt those down. Really love the vids with you and Steve, John. Keep them coming. Even basic miking up would be great. Well, Steve, if you're about, mate, let's kind of have a look in the diary, and we'll sort something like that out. I mean, to be honest with you, Steve is going to be doing all this sort of stuff on his channel, so I would just be because what I know about miking up can be written on the back of a postage stamp. That's why I use, plugins and stuff, and just the lazy way, the easy way of doing it. But if you're looking at recording techniques, then Steve's your man. Yes, of course you can, David. So if Chip's watching as well, then if both of you email me, I'll kind of facilitate a bit of crosstalk there. Yeah, no problem. Oh, who's on the spiced rum? Dearie me. That's a Christmas drink for me. There is a particular tradition we have in our house called gunfire on Christmas morning, where it's basically preferably spiced rum, but any rum will do, in your first cuppa on a morning. It really does set you up nice for the day. How big is your stamp? Fish from Marillion on Friday has something interesting today on his live stream on Facebook. He will do a segment on his favourite gig tickets, what he enjoyed the most. Unfortunately, I will not see that because I'm not on Facebook. Can I hook up an FD4 to a new disk drive? Anyone help? Can somebody help Deco with that one? Because, as I say, IT questions. This is not an IT helpline. I have limited skills in that department. Where are we? Let's have another look at the chat. Oh, Chris saw Limehouse Lizzy in Peterborough. Fantastic. Oh, there's some stuff on YouTube, is that right? Well, that will make, because we've got this new little kind of dongle that goes into the TV downstairs where it allows you to get YouTube on the telly, which is witchcraft as far as I'm concerned, but it seems to work. So when there's nothing on later, which is quite a lot at the time, I shall be checking that out. Yes, Dave, I have done a Steely Dan solo, but it was eons ago. I did Kid Charlemagne. I am thinking of doing another one. It'll probably be the one you requested, Reeling in the Years. I mean, that was it Elliot Randall who played that, who also, I think, played on a couple of Kirsty MacColl albums, didn't he? So, yes, I got to tell you, the only thing I don't like about that about that solo from Reeling in the Years is it's a bit like the Carpenters one that I also did, Goodbye to Love. It's the guitar tone. It's just that sort of fuzz tone kind of thing, which I'm not a big fan of. How about another Andy Powell Wishbone Ash solo sometime? Such an underrated player. Indeed, yes, he is. He is going to be in the regular rotation. I will get round to him at some point. I'm just conscious that when I'm doing these solo analyses, that I don't sort of end up going around the same half a dozen of my favourite players. You know, and I got to tell you, it's teaching me a lot as a guitarist, having to kind of do players who I wouldn't normally look at. I mean, Steve Rothery, there's a case in point. You know, I'm not the biggest authority on Marillion. I still have Misplaced Childhood somewhere as an album kicking around somewhere. But they're not a band I'm kind of very familiar with in a big way. But you know, just doing the couple of solos that I've done, Easter, and what was the one I did last week? Incubus. I'm starting to really kind of think of him as a player. Yes, Andy Latimer. Yes, I should do some Andy Latimer. Something from the Snow Goose, I think. You know, I think so. Yes. Watch this space. Anyway. Yeah, the first kind of thing I heard of Kirsty MacColl was, does anyone else remember that song? There's a guy works down the chip shop, swears he's Elvis. I mean, any song with that title, I'm going to go out and buy it anyway, because it's just like, well, how can you not? You know, and it was just such a brilliantly written and observed song, and you know, fantastic stuff. And then I can't think of a bad Kirsty MacColl song. I really can't. It was so sad that you know that she passed so early, but you know, hey, you know, that, as they say, is life. John, Chord Progressions episode 6 is great, loved it. You're going to love the next one. It's as I said earlier at the top of the video, it's the chord sequence that links Bryan Adams, Green Day, and Oasis. But he's a liar and I'm not sure about you. Indeed, the lyric from the song. Solo from Parents by Budgie is worth a listen. Yeah, you see, this is the value for me of doing this live stream. I would never have thought of doing a Budgie solo. You know, and how many other YouTube videos out there are doing solos? That is kind of what I'm starting to try and do, is to sort of do the solos that no one else is really looking at. Hence why I'm doing Chris Rea this week. You know, Kirsty sang the high notes for Tracy Ullman. I didn't know that. I knew they were friends, but I didn't know that. Now, Budgie was a band, a Welsh kind of three-piece power trio. Well, obviously three-piece power trio. Had some good stuff in their time. I googled them the other day. Apparently, there's still there is still a version of Budgie doing the rounds. Solo from My Sharona. Yeah, that's one I want to tackle, but it's not exactly a short solo, and it's going to take a lot of putting together. And I've got to tell you, lads, I'm doing 5 videos and a live stream every week at the moment, plus doing, you know, kind of upwards of 30 lessons a week at the moment. So time is a factor, but it is one I want to tackle. Danny Custo was a guitarist in the Tom Robinson band. He did some great solos and rhythm stuff. How about analysis of 2468 Motorway? Again, you see, what I mean, that solo, it's a great solo when you mention it, but I would never have thought of, that one would never have popped into my head unprompted. Thank you. I need to write these down. Anyway, chaps, it's been an hour and it's been a blast, and I'm starting to get a bit peckish, and there is a curry waiting to go in the oven downstairs. So I'm going to just swig this last beer off, and thank you all once again so much for turning up and watching a fat lad talk cobblers for an hour. It's immensely gratifying. Thank you to each and every one of you. But for now, I'm going to call time and say, until next time, chaps, time, gentlemen, please.